Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Snowball Wealth podcast, where we talk about how to get out of debt and start building wealth, especially if you're the first in your family to do so. My name is Tanya Menendez, and today we have a Latina finance executive and angel investor, and she's also a Snowball community member, Karen Sheffield. Karen is an immigrant from Peru and moved to the United States 18 years ago as a transfer student. She's currently the director of finance at Visa and also a part-time angel investor in startups. Welcome to the show.
So much, Tanya. I'm really happy to be here. Excited to be on your show.
Well, I wanted to get started by just hearing about your story and what it took, if you were to encapsulate what it took to go from being an immigrant coming here to the United States as a transfer student to then becoming director of finance at Visa, one of the largest payment companies in the world. What was that mindset? What were some of those takeaways in
Yeah.
having that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that question. So I would say there were many qualities that I think and lessons I learned along the way. But I would say it definitely took great passion, determination. I would say that even since I was in college, I wanted to chart my own path, right? And so what it took was taking control of my career and the journey that I wanted to take on that, and not relying on others or circumstances in taking that next step, and really being thoughtful about it, right? Like finding what is it that really resonates with me, and doubling down on that, right? And what, as I was building my career, but I could leave it high level like that. That's what I would say.
Yeah. And so part of it was, managing your own career. And how did you do that exactly? Going from, what was maybe one of your first jobs out of college? And then did you go
Yeah.
to graduate school? I'm curious to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I even started as an intern and doing summer internships in finance when I was in college. I remember taking the bus because I didn't have a car. I was a poor college student, immigrant, and so I remember taking the bus to downtown Fort Worth and armed with hundreds of copies of my resume, physical, if you can believe it, and doing it old fashioned and knocking on doors in offices in downtown Fort Worth. And remember having so many people say, "We don't have a posting, we don't have a job or an internship opportunity for you right now," including Wachovia Securities, which was one of the offices I visited. But funny enough, maybe 3 weeks later, they called me back randomly. A lady from Wachovia Security said, "Didn't you come over here with a physical copy of your resume? We're looking, you're an intern, right? Student in finance at TCU." I was like, "Yes, I did." It's like, "Well, we did not have a posting 3 weeks ago, but now, as it turns out, a financial advisor needs a brokerage intern, and we're just creating this position. And we thought of the person that showed up, with a physical copy of resume. You made an impression." I was like, "Oh, fantastic!" So that was one of the first roles in the U.S. as a finance
Wow.
intern.
Wait, so you went door to door with physical copies of your resume?
I got myself on the bus, and
Wow. And you just said, what did you say? You walk in and you say, "I want to talk to the manager. I'm interested in the internship."
Yeah, absolutely. I was the first person I saw was an assistant, right? An executive assistant, someone in the front desk who is the face of the firm, and talking to them and explaining what is it that I was looking for. And many of them said, "This is not usually how applicants show interest. We can go online." But I always thought that an in-person connection was going to make an impression, and it did. I wasn't wrong when Wachovia Securities called.
Wow. And did you also apply online, or was that the only way that you applied?
So I did apply online, but I think to no avail, right? Like you end up being an application among thousands. And so it's really important to differentiate yourself, like really bring something. And this is good advice anywhere, right? In any situation is, be unique and stand out, show your true colors. Because I think that's what has really helped me get ahead.
Yeah, you know what? I have a similar story. It's funny that you shared that because one of my first internships, I really wanted to work in think tanks, and I actually cold called the top think tank that I wanted to work for,
Wow.
and they hired me. And
Wow.
I was shocked that it worked, but I was like, you know what? I can't just keep waiting around. I need it.
Yeah,
And it was a similar energy. So I'm so glad it does work to go the extra mile. And today, what that
absolutely.
could look like is, I've seen other people, even applying for our company, they create a mini website or they create a project for themselves. And so going that extra mile really goes a long way. And I
Yeah.
think that's the mindset. It sounds like that's the mindset that's helped you in your career
Yes,
throughout.
absolutely.
And so let's get a little bit into the financial side of things because you're now an angel investor, which is amazing that you have that ability now or like that financial stability to be able to do that. But I'm sure it wasn't always that way, right? So I'm curious to hear, your financial journey from when you graduated, any financial mistakes or lessons learned, and then, how you were able to progress over time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there were many lessons learned on the way, and I'm still a work in progress, as most people, right? Like, or everyone can say about themselves. But I think one of the mistakes were earlier in my career, right? Really early, like right out of college, I started racking up credit card debt, and it really got up to the thousands. And so it was really a moment to buckle up, to wake up call, and say, okay, what am I doing here? What can I cut? What kind of things and habits are like really not helping my financial situation and getting me to get to the point where I can have a good and a decent credit score that will open up doors later down the road, because that was what a friend of the family had suggested and really advised me to do. And so I started laser focused on that, on my own personal finances. And then as my career progressed, obviously, as I I am an ambitious person and I want to keep growing, right? So always trying to carefully curate and plan my next step in my career, inevitably that led to thankfully higher income, right? And a higher salary, and all of that coupled with the fact that I learned how to save money, how to really get under, all of this under control, really helped me get to the point where I am now. But I have to say, even 2 years ago, you would think, you've been angel investing for, even 2 years ago when I started getting into angel investments, I was still unaccredited, right? And an accredited investor. So for those who don't really know the definitions, an accredited investor is someone who doesn't really yet meet the SEC requirement and criteria in order to actually invest in private capital markets, which are very high risk. So I started small with crowdfunding websites like Republic, right, and Start Engine, and all of those. So it was, it's like I said, it's a work in progress. So
Yeah. Well, I want to backtrack a little bit and hear about the story that you shared that impacted you when you first moved here. You mentioned that a family friend had given you some advice. Can you share that story a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was the only person, the only group of people that we knew from Peru in the U.S. at the time. They were really good friends with my family. My mom and the lady and the family went to school together in med school in Peru many years ago. And so they had established themselves in California. And I remember landing in California first, even before coming over to Texas for college, just staying with them for a few weeks, and they were showing me around, and but one of the first things that the first advice I received from the guy in family, right, the father of that family, was always focus on building a good credit score. In the United States, a credit score speaks very loudly when it comes to like opening your doors and do everything. And I even remember asking, what is a credit score? That's not how we talk, in Peru. That's not what, I mean, to a certain degree, you talk about a credit rating or history, but there wasn't like a standard measurement of, your credit.
That's
And so
right. It's not like
yeah,
that everywhere. It's a very United States.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Part of the financial system in the United States. You're right. It's not the same in other countries.
Yeah, so it was an interesting combo because I was like, "What is that? What are you talking about? Why is this the first thing you're telling me?" As I just landed on the way to your home, but it resonated with me. It stayed with me even when I didn't quite understand it at the time, and it came in very handy right when I started racking up the credit card debt. And I remember those words. It's like, okay, it's time to really take this control again.
Yeah. And sometimes it's those moments where someone tells you something, it plants a seed, and then later on you start to remember, when it becomes more relevant. So it sounds like that was one of those moments.
Yes.
Well, I'm also curious to hear, how you like the mindset to get out of credit card debt. You mentioned that you had a bit of credit card debt that you had racked up early in your career, which is such a common experience. I just want to share that it's such a common
Yes.
thing that we see, that no one should be ashamed of having debt today. But I'm curious to hear how you got out of it and, started to save
Yeah.
and invest.
Yeah, I think the mindset was, I can no longer avoid the funds here. Like at first, the first three. I think that set me on like this different mode, right? Like, okay, it's time to really get this under control because, well, first of all, I am the first of, I'm the oldest of three siblings. And now I had my youngest brother at the time moving to study to TCU. So he got admitted into the same school and he came over and moved a year after I moved there. And I felt the responsibility. It's always been like that. I don't know if it's an older sibling thing, but you always feel the responsibility to help the parents, right? Like, get your siblings up to speed and all that. So I had that financial responsibility, or I put that on myself. My parents didn't put it on me, but I wanted to help, right? Like, so when I was fresh out of college and I was starting to rack up this debt, that became like a big motivator, is helping my family, like I'm going to now be paying the bills of my youngest brother in college whilst he is finishing it up. So that was one of the things that definitely was a motivator to get out of debt. And then just the fact that I knew I wanted to get ahead in my career, and I wouldn't be able to do that if personally my financial matters were not in order. So I think that was the mindset.
And I think that's such, that also is a very much like a first in your family dynamic that you have, and it can be a motivator, right? I think that I felt similarly, where like a lot, and I think, it's a common feeling that a lot of first generation college grads or first generation Americans have is, you want to be a good role model for your family. You want to, the sacrifices that they've made. And so you want to be able to pay that forward and to kind of make sure that their sacrifices weren't for, almost like, for lack of a better word, weren't for nothing. Right. And so, I think that's a really common feeling, and I'm so glad you shared that. I'm sure a lot of people can relate. And then you also mentioned, you started out angel investing because you weren't accredited yet. Starting off by using some crowdfunding platforms and things like that. Can you share a little bit about the investments that you've made and some that you're excited about that maybe shout out to support?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to start by saying that angel investing really is for everyone. You don't really have to be accredited to start. You can start with the crowdfunding sites. Some of them even have a minimum requirement as low as $100 into each of the startups. So it's you don't have to wait until you have amassed some wealth or anything to start. Start now, start going into these websites, scan what's exciting to you, right? And obviously take a deep look at how you're managing your debt first, right? And make sure that you have your emergency savings and under control before you go ahead and do that. But yeah, I would love to talk about it. I made 4 investments in the last 2 years. And the first one of the first ones was actually a retail tech company called Popcom. This is a woman that is a founder of that company, and they essentially the best way to describe it is like they are like retail vending machines, right? Like that you see in the airport. And I think she actually is also the founder of another company called Flat Out Shoes. So those actually.
Oh my gosh, I know Dawn. That's so funny.
Dawn.
I met her at a conference a few years ago. Wow. Well, shout out to you, Dawn. That's so cool. What a small world.
Yes, that was my first investment. So Dawn was like the entry into the investing world for me in angel investing, and so yes, love her. Love her.
And she, I think, was making millions of dollars, right? Through her company was doing really well. And so it's cool to see these platforms now giving some entrepreneurs a chance to be able to allow smaller checks to come in. Oh, how cool that was one of your first, that was your first angel investment.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Yeah. And then there are others that came after, and this wasn't by design, but all my angel investments were in female founders. you know, it wasn't by design. And I say that in all transparency because it was just, I think it goes to say that what deal flow, some deal flow is just a word for like, you know, the companies or the startups that you get access to, right? The different companies that you can potentially invest in. Access is very interesting and really key to this, to actually democratizing, right? The asset class to everyone is the people that I interact with and the networks I have access to are different than maybe my counterparts that are more well established and incumbents in venture capital are, right? So it's interesting because I wasn't doing it by design. It was just the founders I was having access and, you know, constant interaction with, and that they really had been impressive to me personally, and how they were running their business and how they were trying to scale it. So it's super interesting. But yeah, it was fascinating to start, just get started.
Yeah, and I know that you mentioned that you also, or I guess this is in our pre-interview, but you mentioned that you also purchased your first home recently. So would love to hear about that experience and maybe some of the other ways that you've been, you know, you started investing, maybe through retirement accounts or anything else like that you'd want to share for some
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, it took a while to get to where I was comfortable enough to really purchase a home. And the funny thing is that my husband and I moved from Texas to California a little bit over a year ago. And so we were already doing the contrarian thing. People were giving us a lot of of a hard time in Texas. Like, you're doing it the opposite way. People are moving from Texas to California, but the other way around.
I mean,
and so we're like, oh yeah, well, you know, I got this job with Visa, and then Silicon Valley seems like a good place to keep learning, you know, about VC. And anyways, we made a move, but then, you know, scanning and really visiting different apartment complexes and things to rent out, I just realized very quickly, wow, the rent here is going to be twice as much what we pay for rent in our apartment in Texas for the same square footage. I was like, I can't make this decision rationally and feel good about it, that I'm pouring twice as much of money into someone else's equity. That's how I rationalize it. And so I decided, okay, we have some savings from, thank God we were able to really do this and like save some money during the pandemic in Texas where we weren't going anywhere and spending any money. And then we were living in Texas, so we were able to save money for that matter alone. So we, were able to put together 5% down. That is as much as we could put together. And then the benefit of the timing, we had the timing working for us because during the pandemic, especially towards the beginning, the interest rates were low, really low. So we were able to lock an interest rate, and it was the time to do that, right? Like, I mean, my husband and I were still a little hesitant, and he was a little bit more hesitant than me. But it's like he was saying, you know, maybe 6 months. It's like, no, the time is now to act. I don't even know. I think the interest rates are going to start coming back up, you know, as we come out of the pandemic. We have the money right now for the 5% down payment. 6 months later, we won't, because we'll continue spending money in California, which is more expensive. So all of these things, it's like, we got to act now, right? And so we finally did it. But yeah, it was a grueling process to really find a home too. Yeah. Maybe a topic for a different podcast episode.
Yeah. That's a whole, I'm sure it's a whole thing. Well, I know we just have a few minutes left, but I'd love to hear if there's any other pieces of advice that you have for our listeners that are potentially wanting to, you know, advance in their career or in investing, or just in general, you know.
Yeah.
Any words of advice that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, if you haven't heard or have not connected with the Snowball Wealth community, do that pronto. I mean, seriously, it goes back to community. If I didn't have like a board of advisors, mentors, whatever you like to call them, building that network throughout my career and my personal life, I would not have been exposed to all the, you know, you learn from your own mistakes, but I can't remember how the saying goes, but it's like something like the smart people learn from their own mistakes, the wise learn from other people's mistakes, right? And you cannot do that, right? Yeah. Unless you build this community. And so I would encourage everyone to just reach out. You know, you never know. And like Tanya and I shared earlier, you don't be afraid just to be a little different and do something unconventional. Just go ahead and do it, and you will be surprised of the outcomes.
And I love that you share that, because I think that sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right? So just being around people, hearing their stories, you get ideas, you have a new way of thinking, and putting together your own board of advisors. Or even if you just download it and like lurk and read what other people are saying, that's still progress, right? You're still exposing yourself to new ideas. And so I think, that's one of the reasons why we started the community, was because we wanted people to just get some more exposure to ideas, how other people are managing their finances, so that, sometimes you see yourselves in others, and that starts to help motivate you to get unstuck or have a new way of thinking. Well, so thank you so much for sharing some of your story. I'm sure we're going to have you back on, in a few months as new things develop. I think that there's some new things in the pipeline for you. I won't spoil the surprise, but really excited to continue to follow your journey. Where's the best place that people can connect with you?
Yeah, Tony, I appreciate those words too. They can follow me on LinkedIn, or feel free to connect and give me some context that you were listening to the podcast. Karen Sheffield, MBA, on LinkedIn. And I'm also on Twitter, and you can find me as KAR underscore N underscore TWITTS. So Karen Tweets. And so, but yeah, you can follow me there as well.
Awesome. Well, we'll also put that in the show notes, and I hope you have an amazing day. And for those listening, if you're interested in getting started and joining the community, you can download our mobile app in the App Store. Just search for Snowball Wealth, or online on the web, snowballwealth.com. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.